Welcome. Hold on, starting record. Here we go. And welcome to the episode of League DFS. My name is Chris Chung at Primetime. We are live here tonight. Well, we're actually not streaming, but you guys will hear the recording Thursday. And I have a great returning guest. Through this process of just doing this show, I get to meet all you awesome guys, starting with Zing, who's gracious enough to get me connected. And now I have a whole group of, I feel like I'm part of a community now, and I'm only doing like the fantasy stuff of
Absolutely, yeah.
But you guys are way more plugged into the esports scene. And tonight I have a returning guest, like I mentioned. Aaron, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Super busy day.
Yeah.
But things are starting to wind down. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
good to be
absolutely.
back.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed us talking last time, and I'm sure all my listeners and audience really enjoyed the knowledge that you dropped. And tonight we're going to tap in a little bit more just so you can enrich us with your knowledge about the esports world. So let us start off with a simple thing that, I haven't talked about, I've neglected to talk about, but team compositions. How are teams planning around each other? What are some of the standard compositions? We hear a lot that analysts talk about that this comp is better for certain winning conditions, or how they're played and how do they fit with certain players and their play style. So can you give us a breakdown of the standard, what the traditional compositions are, what are some of their counters, and then we might dive into a little bit more, because right now I know the meta is shifting more towards lane swapping and whatnot.
Yeah, so team comps in League of Legends are a very fluid thing. They change often, and at one point in time, they were very crystallized and not so fluid. You had your standard enchanter or tank support, late game ADC, mage in the mid lane, bruiser top lane, and then some sort of late game carry in the jungle. That is all over the place. Last year was just as chaotic. It's not really chaotic anymore now that it's the norm. Just that there are so many different things to do now, and honestly, team comps are a lot more difficult to predict, or to at least apply just a blanket statement to, especially because they can change per team, they can change per region. What is good for one person might be awful for another person. What's good in one region might be awful for another region. It's difficult. There are things that stick in your memory. Like the one that I always think of when I think about team comps is the Cannonball comp, which is a fun one that made a lot of appearances last year with Jarvan and Galio. You have basically one or two champions set up just like a pit of people, and then Galio dives in on top. You have there are some different comps like that. But yeah, I mean, you have in Europe, you have top laners going mid and mid laners going top, and mid laners going ADC, and ADC players playing support. I don't know. It really just depends on the team, and I would honestly look to, at this point in time in League of Legends history, if you want to try to get a beat on what a team comp might be played in a specific game, I would check a team's match history. I wouldn't look at a region-wide meta anymore. I would look at what a team thinks is working for them and that they are practicing. That would probably be the best place to start.
Awesome. And I'm sure when you're talking about Europe, G2 brought in this chaotic style.
G2, even more traditional teams like Fnatic. I mean, you have random games where Rekkles will play Karma for some reason. Like it happens.
He's not good. I have to say.
Yeah. I mean, it's Karma. Like you can't. Rekkles is a good player, but if you put him on someone like Karma, that's not what he plays. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it worked. In the one game, the last time he played it, I think was their win against G2. So yeah, I mean, it's all over the place.
We'll definitely touch on that. I think he pulled it. They tried to play that again against Splice, or was it the following day? Either way, we know that teams are trying things. They're no longer this one style or one way of beating one another.
Exactly.
And I love watching that, but it makes for really hard to predict who's gonna win.
It does. It does make our jobs much harder.
It just throws every conventional thinking about what makes of a good draft, and then how we can just foresee the outcome of the game. But that unpredictability does bring a lot of entertainment value. So
for sure.
We're no longer stating that Korea has the right way to play, or you have to play the LPL style to catch up. Right now, everyone's trying their own things, and I love seeing that. I love watching them try things out. Sometimes it get frustrating because they're trying out things that makes no sense. Perhaps it made sense to them in the scrims. Well, thank you so much for just helping us walk through that idea, and this will help us just know to look into team history and to know going forward why the picks and bans are important for understanding the game.
Sure.
So let's head into the bulk of the LCS LEC discussion. We'll start off with a little news. Of course, it's not LEC or LCS related. We have a retirement coming. What can you tell us about this recent retirement in the LPL region?
Mlxg retired, yeah. RNG's jungler. He is a long time league player. It's a bummer to hear. I don't know. I think some people were saying he's a little past his prime. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Because I think RNG was really at their peak just like a year ago. So like to say that he's past his prime only a year past that is harsh, I think, to say the least. But I don't know. He had a really successful career. He had a couple LPL championship victories. He had an MSI victory, Asia Games victory. Mm-hmm. Really successful jungler in the LPL, and it's for sure a bummer to see him leave.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember him last year. He was part of that RNG run, right?
Yep.
And of course, it's great that they have two great junglers and they know how to play them. If I'm not mistaken, Karsa was better suited for the best of ones, and they say that Mlxg was better for the best of fives kind of play.
Yeah, Mlxg has a long history at international events and in tournaments. So like whenever you had a match of stamina, like a best of five, he would always be, I think, a little better. But Karsa is really talented as well.
Yes, absolutely. So we will miss him. We'll definitely miss him. Won't be surprised with the recent unretirement that's been happening. Shout out to was it Prey or Pawn? One of them.
Oh, the retirement and then unretirement. That was Prey. Yes,
that was Prey. And we also saw a little bit in the spring with RNG's top laner. Don't forget about his name. That's not in
RNG's
any case.
top laner. Oh man.
Yeah.
Let me? No, he's support.
No,
one of them. Let me. Okay.
It was Let Me. He retired before the spring and then he unretired. But maybe we'll see him back. Who knows? But he certainly is one of the more enjoyable jungler to watch in the China region. In other news today, TSM dropped the news that going forward will just be Akaadian. No more swapping in and out. That will bring Grig's record to 2 losses or 1 loss.
2, I believe.
2 losses, right?
Yeah, and that's an interesting bit of news because opinions seem to be really mixed on it. I think what some people are forgetting is that it was very frowned upon when they originally announced that there would be a two man jungle, and that Akaadian would have to share his time. After right in the middle of when Akaadian seemed to finally get going. Yeah. And I think it makes sense that they would let Grig go. I think here's what I think. I think Grig probably has more success for sure. I think he's a little more reliable, but I think Akaadian has way more potential. And I don't think Grig is more reliable enough to justify taking him over Akaadian for a long-term play. If you're not going to get that much out of Grig, you might as well just go for the long-term play and So I think going back to Akaadian is the right call.
All right. And certainly stability is something that TSM really needs, because just going through what the fans are talking about, the junglers position has traditionally been an issue for TSM, starting with last year, with, or maybe even further than that. But from my knowledge, Mike Young, and then they swap him out, and it's just hasn't found any stability for that team.
They have had trouble in the jungle for a long time. The only stint of stability they had in that role at all after the odd one left was Svenskeren. For the 3 or 4 splits or whatever, they did pretty well with him. But before him and after him, it's just been a nightmare.
Yeah.
And Akaadian, and like I was saying, like last split, it looked like Akaadian was like getting into the groove, and he was improving every week. And when they were like, "All right, you're sharing your spot now," I just felt like that was kind of bad to do. But well, hopefully he can keep heading that direction now that he has the spot back.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think players knowing that they are going to have a job or stability without the swapping does change their mentality a bit. I know Broxa talked about, Dan and whatnot.
Oh, yeah. Well, Brox is a superhuman, so...
well, he proved that he belongs.
Probably not a fair example to the rest of the mortals in League, but yeah.
Absolutely, and he just showed up and showed off that, sticking with him would be the right idea for them.
Oh, yeah.
And that segues us into just looking into, we're going to start with a review of last week's, both in the LEC and the LCS. And then we get to start off with the LEC. Now, major game that played last week that, really I didn't expect was how good Splice has looked. And they beat the formerly undefeated Fnatic.
Yep.
What were your thoughts about that game?
So I actually studied that game quite a bit for a piece. I don't think it's published yet, so I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it. But one for Riot. I'm writing for their EU team. So I looked into that match quite a bit because the question I was trying to solve is how do you disrupt the rhythm between G2 and Fnatic? And so you have to look at the 2 games that the one that G2 lost and the one that Fnatic lost to try to figure out if there's anything to replicate. And yeah, so I think there were a lot of things that Splice did right that are easy to replicate. I think it's a lot easier to beat Fnatic than it is to beat G2. If you're trying to look at which team you want to try to take down first. I think Fnatic relies on a strategy every time they win a game. And that strategy is have Broxa control the early game, put him on something that can pressure early, and then you put Bwipo and Hylissang on champions that can back him up whenever he tries to make a tower dive. And the thing that Splice did is every time they tracked Broxa, which is, I think, the pitfall that the pitfall that teams run into when trying to beat Fnatic is everyone's still trying to beat Rekkles. That's not how you beat Fnatic anymore. It's all about how you beat Broxa. Because no matter how bad Rekkles does, if Broxa carries the early game, Rekkles is going to do well at some point. You have to beat Broxa to beat Fnatic. And so they didn't necessarily out-jungle him or anything, but they tracked him, and they tracked him really well. And so the point that the game turned was they had vision on him recalling, and the second his recall finished, they did a double tower dive mid. And Broxa he hadn't even left the fountain yet by the time the play was over. And then from there on, it was just a snowball, and Splice used their lead to win the game. And I think it was a relatively quick one at like 28 minutes or something like that. Not like fast, but it was like, it wasn't like a grueling like back and forth or anything like that. So it's all about tracking Broxa. Even if the scary thing, the really scary thing about Broxa is that even if you match him and you try to counter gank, he'll probably win. So you need to find points where you're sure he's not going to be there and try to make a play there. And that I think is you take away his comfort picks. They took away the Elise and the Lee Sin in the bans. And I think they did that whole match right. beating G2 is a whole different conversation. But
right.
Fnatic, they beat Broxa, they beat Fnatic.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point to make. I know that that game, Broxa, the stat line didn't look good for him, and that's probably because they figured out where he was and just played,
Yeah,
find a way
he
to
didn't
solve
have like a horrible game. It was just that
absolutely.
Splyce knew how to move around him, and that's what you have to do.
One of the words you dropped earlier was that it's repeatable, or they can redo that. So
Yes.
out of all the other teams, I know G2 can probably do it. Splyce showed that they can do it. Were there other teams that could apply similar strategy or against Fnatic?
G2 actually, I would say, is going to have a hard time because their weak spot is their jungle.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot because Jankos is like pretty good. He's just not Broxa. And the issue is that G2 relies on the lanes to win, and they rely on caps roaming and making tower dives rather than the jungler. So it's like a clash of styles, which is interesting because last year it was G2 that perfectly countered Fnatic. Yeah, so or last split, sorry, not last year. Yeah, so I think G2 might actually have a little bit of a hard time. Maybe they were a little boosted when in the game where Fnatic beat them, but we'll see. But other teams that could beat them, it would take a jungler that knows his game, isn't like a flashy player, but just knows how to run a macro really well. Because really, all it is winning macro. I would say maybe Schalke. I don't think Origin, because all of Origin's macro comes from Miffy, which is in the bot lane. So I think Origin might actually have a really hard time against the Fnatic matchup, but Schalke maybe. I would say
I like Trick, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. And speaking of Origin, that's a great segue into, let's discuss what is going on with them since Rift Rivals, or maybe even before then. We started seeing some signs of these are not the same Origin that ended spring split at a strong point, losing to XL, which crazy.
Yeah. I think everyone has a bad game, and I think that was just their bad game. They didn't play. It didn't look like XL was taking what Origin does and like using it against them or anything. I think honestly, just Origin had a bad one. Okay. But I wouldn't be too worried about Origin. I think a lot of the issue is that in the spring split, it was a lot less of a competitive league, where it was basically the G2 and Fnatic show, like up until the end when Origin was like, all right, we beat Fnatic, now we're top 2. But otherwise, it was like there was a pretty big gap between the top and the middle. But this split, it's a whole different story. The Fnatic and G2 discussion is similar, but you have like Splyce and Schalke specifically have gotten much better since last split. Yeah. And I think that they are just giving Origin more trouble, and then Origin having a bad game against a team like Excel definitely doesn't help anything. But I wouldn't be too worried yet. I'm curious to see them play against Splyce and Schalke one or two more times before I can get a more accurate read on them. But for now, I wouldn't say you need to be that worried.
All right. Certainly would like it to be a more competitive league and not just the G2 show, right?
Yeah.
But they're far and away still the most entertaining.
Yeah. It's a tough dance to Fnatic and G2 have been in that waltz for years, and it's tough to crack into it, man.
Absolutely. And the last news we have on the LEC is the discussion. Someone on Twitter, I think it's Veteran, dropped a hint that there will be a wholesale changes. Now, up to date, we still have no idea which team he's referring to, but my guess would be Misfits. Do you have a different team in mind that he could be referring to?
No, I think Misfits is a safe bet. I mean, for that level of a change, how do you look at any of these rosters and not just immediately go to Misfits? I mean, it's like they have this roster that was supposed to be a super team. They're the 100 Thieves of Europe, essentially. They spent all this money on all these amazing players, and they're just not clicking. So yeah, I mean, you got to imagine ninth place going towards the end of another split at the bottom with that roster with that much money being spent. You got to imagine the higher ups are like, maybe we should just blow everything up.
Yeah.
So yeah, Misfits is I definitely think a safe bet if there's credence to the rumor.
Oh, wow, and that is going to be interesting because we've only seen Kiri and Leader having some stage time. So if they're going to make a wholesale swap, it is definitely a whole team that has little or no LEC experience before.
Which might be all right. I don't know.
Might be all right. Okay. So
Cloud9 did it last year.
Yeah, that's true. I had the same idea about 100 Thieves too when they started out and they made that swap. Now, from your perspective, where do you think the Misfit issue lies? Because this has been longer than just this year. It's since last split, even. Start off strong. Then
they just haven't been the same team since PoE left. They even had a decent run last year, just because Maxlore is really good. But it's looking at it this year. I had said the same thing about 100 Thieves. You have some sort of synergistic problem. Like there has to be something that just isn't clicking. It's not that any of these players particularly are bad. I don't think any of them are bad, even though they're playing really bad. I think they're still objectively really good players, but they're put into a position where they just have a really hard time working either with a specific strategy or with a specific player. It could come down to coaching, but it's got to be something really like deep seated. This goes way beyond this player is the problem. So it's yeah, I mean, at this point I would say you got to either replace all of player management and coaching or you replace the whole team.
Okay.
Honestly, I said the same thing about 100 Thieves, but then they started winning games, so what do I know?
And they have a limited time to turn things around. And in the LEC, it's not getting any easier because teams are improving. We see improvement in SK, inconsistent, but improvement. I like the direction where Rogue is headed, although they're not quite there yet. I do really like some of the players that they brought in. They were young. They, bring in some different atmosphere, hopefully.
Absolutely.
And so then you have the old guards, Splice, Fnatic, G2, and Origin still up there. Schalke showing. So it's a tough climb for Misfits. So from your estimation, do you see this same Misfit team in 2020?
No. Definitely not. I think that we're at the point where it's too late for them to try to make it. They can try to make it work by the end of the split, but it's too late for that to matter, is the problem. So I think at this point, the ownership has to start looking at more long-term solutions right now so that they're ready to go as soon as the split ends.
All right. So not so much good news for Misfit fans, but maybe it is. But
I mean, yeah, I think it is. It literally can't get worse. So like, I think that it's only good. Like even for the players, it's good. Like it just isn't working, man. Like get them out of there, get them on other teams with other coaches and other teammates, and they'll probably have a much better time than they're having right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, changes may sometimes be good for both players and organization in and of itself. So let's turn to a little preview of this weekend's matches on Friday and Saturday slate. Let's start with the Friday slate. Of all the games right now, pretty much the question that I have is Vitality. They started off really, really shaky. Came back with a couple of good performances. Though not against any of the stronger teams, but they did show up. They don't look more like the Vitality that I know, more so than what happened before Rift Rivals. Now they get to face Schalke in this game. What is your thought? What are your thoughts on these two teams, and how do you see this matchup going?
Yeah, I think Schalke is doing well. I think that Schalke has been in a weird kind of stasis since Amazing left. I think that he filled a big role, and then I like their team, but they've just been trying to figure out who leads who comes up with the ideas, from what you can tell from the outside. And I think that this split has been a good like refresher. Like they clearly know what they're doing. They're not like the best of the best or anything, but like they're a force to be reckoned with for sure. And I think if Vitality is going to prove that they can handle solid competition, it's this game.
All right.
So if they are on the comeback, it's got to be against Schalke, because if you pit them against G2, you know what's going to happen. So I think it's got to be like Schalke or Origin, like that kind of area.
All right. And I know Vitality, or especially the coach Yamato Cannon, has received a lot of criticism at the beginning of the split, where people are saying, "Oh, this is happening again." Do you think that those criticisms are fair, or have some credence to them?
I think they have credence, but that they're also a little unfair. I think that it took him a long time to get into a rhythm with his roster. And then this split and last split have just been so hard to keep up with that it seems like he's been trying to. My dogs are so loud. It seems like he's been trying to like hold on to like the same old style that they had like at Worlds, but it's just like not clicking the same way as it used to. I would put money on. I mean, he's a good coach. I've talked to him a few times. I like him a lot. I think that he knows what he's doing. I would say that it's a safe bet to assume that by the end of the split he'll tweak something that can allow his old style to work again. But if not, I would imagine by 2020 arrival there will be at least 1 or 2 roster changes. We'll see what happens.
All right. And of course, I can dig into more of that, but to save us some time, from the Friday slate, are there any games that you think would be particularly high scoring in kills, as our viewers want to know, and any games that people might be too high on, but you think this is more of an even matchup, or that there will be lower scoring in terms of kills?
I think on the low end, I think SK Origin for sure. Those are both very slow-paced teams. Even though Origin is doing that well, they don't play the same as the other teams at the top, and that means that they don't force as much, and SK doesn't know what they do. So it's I wouldn't expect there to be many kills in that game. Sorry, hiccup. I would say high kills. The obvious answer is G2 Excel. G2 loves to move fast and punish teams, but the scary part, though, if you're looking for a game that might not end as well as people are thinking it might be, that game, G2 might just run over Excel so fast that there isn't enough room for kills.
Yeah.
For all we know, there might just be like 12 total kills, and it's just they're all on G2's side. So like, there's a very real possibility of that happening because there's a very wide skill gap here. I would say I would actually put my money probably on Fnatic Rogue probably having more kills. With Rogue having a little more fight in them than Excel, and Fnatic playing nearly as aggressively as G2 in recent weeks. I would say that it's more likely that Excel or that Rogue puts up a fight and that things get a little bloodier there. But either one of those are probably going to be high kill. But there's definitely an inkling of a doubt in my mind that the G2 Excel one might just be like G2 bowls over him in 15 minutes and then it's over.
And we've seen that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the game's over. I didn't even take it.
I blinked what happened.
And if anyone can do it, it's definitely G2. Looking into the Saturday slate, there's one interesting matchup. I think more so, less so for fantasy purpose, or maybe it's for fantasy purposes as well. It's G2 against Splice. These are the conversation of the number 1 team against the number 3, or maybe number 2 and against number 3, who just took down number 1.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a rock paper scissors.
It's a discussion for sure. I think you got to put your money on G2, but there is definitely like, if Splice wants to show that they have the strategy to be able to take down the top 2 teams, the talent's there. The issue is that they keep getting outsmarted. So they can outsmart Fnatic. They got to show that they can outsmart G2, and then people will take them seriously. the way to beat G2 is all about just not falling for their crap.
Yeah.
G2
Yes.
does so much wild stuff every game, and the reason good players trip up against them is because they try new things to try to cope with what G2's throwing at them. Splice, I mean, Fnatic showed that if you just play like you play normally, like Bleep was like, I don't care that that's caps, I'm gonna dive him just like I would normally. I mean, if you play your game, I think if Splice has good enough talent that if they realize that and they play back and they play for their own, they play like they usually play, they could pull away a win here, but it's definitely G2 favored.
Absolutely fun to watch the game. Okay, so looking at this slate as well, I'll ask the same question: the highest scoring game and the lowest scoring game for you.
Highest scoring. I'm interested to see how Origin Vitality gets. That could be a bloody game with Vitality getting a little more aggressive last week and the week before, and they might be able to force Origin's hand into a bunch of team fights that they don't want, and that could result into some weird back and forths. Outside of that, again, the obvious answer is probably Fnatic SK. Another really wide skill gap where Fnatic will probably at least themselves rack up a lot of kills. But again, it could go that Fnatic just bowls them over. So,
all right, and that will be definitely a game that I will think a little bit harder on. I know SK and Fnatic has this interesting dynamic. Well, Spring Split was like 3-0 for SK with the remake game. All right. So let's turn to North America. Some who might consider the best region for most of the world, probably not, comparatively.
Probably not.
Probably not. So last weekend was, to say the least, interesting. Sunday was what I would dub and probably call this show as well the Game of Throws.
Absolutely.
So many, I think 2 or 3 games where one team was leading and then somehow they lost it all. Is this NA? Is this typical of NA? Is this what was going on?
Yeah, it's for sure typical of NA. I mean, especially now we're getting to the middle of the split where everyone's starting to get into their heads, anything can happen at this point. It's the same every summer, every single summer. Things get really nuts right around this time. If you remember from 2018, this right now is where Cloud9 started their last place to first place run.
Right.
So this is where things are going to get really weird. Not just for Cloud9, just for everybody. You have Optic losing games now, 100 Thieves winning games now. CLG fell from, I think they were tied for first. I think they're in like third or fourth now.
Third or fourth, yeah.
Liquid's still Liquid, but for the most part, throws are not going to be rare. Upsets are not going to be rare. It's going to be a wild couple of weeks.
All right. And one of the teams that I want to talk about that had momentum going into the split is Golden Guardians. I didn't really read into the reasons why they decided to sub in FBI and Huhi, outside of just the brief mention that, they performed well in scrims. And I think this happened right around after Rift Rivals over. Golden Guardians came in with a lot of momentum. They were in games, they were fighting, they were active, and then they decided to make this switch, and the results were 50-50. I think they lost one, they won one. They lost one, they won one. So they've been going for 2 weekends. What is your thought of this switch? And is it speaks more to Deftly and Ole? Was it Ole? Deftly. Ole. And your thoughts?
This is an interesting situation because there isn't another team that's in Golden Guardian's shoes. I doubt it has anything to do with Deftly and FBI. I'm pretty sure this battle is between Ole and Huhi. I think what happened, from what I understand, is Huhi and Darshan were brought on to Golden Guardians Academy team because no one would pick them up. And this was Huhi's first time not mid laning in ever, I think.
Yeah.
And he just clicked. Like, he played support way better than anyone thought he would. And he had a pop off of the beginning of the split. They started plugging him into scrims. He was running through bot lanes there. And Ole is not bad. But the issue is these are two former superstars who he at one point being on a very good CLG, and you have Ole obviously with a 2-time NALCS wins, and then before that the finals appearance with Immortals. And Worlds appearance with Immortals. Mm-hmm. And they're in a weird spot where they have to try to figure out quickly who they're going to bank on for the end of the split. Because if who he really is that good at support, it wouldn't make sense not to try. But at the same time, Ole is a much safer pick because they know he's going to be at least a little above average at worst, and then on his best days, he's really good. I think they only plugged FBI in with Hui because that's who he's used to playing with from Academy. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I don't think the question really is Deftly versus FBI as much as it is Hui versus Ole. But you know what? We're halfway through the split, so they got to figure this out quickly.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Like I mentioned, the inconsistent result gives us pause as to what their plan is. Do you foresee maybe they bring back Deftly and keep Hui at support?
I don't think so. Like I said, I think Ole is solid enough that if Hui can't replicate how much he was winning in scrims on the stage, they're probably just going to put him back in Academy. I don't think they're gonna try that any longer than they have to, because for this split they don't have to compete with FlyQuest, which was their big competition last split. So they have one hurdle taken care of, and they have all the other hurdles to worry about now. But at least like they don't have to worry about Hui versus Wild Turtle because for some reason, or Ole versus Wild Turtle because for some reason Ole just can't play well against Wild Turtle. I don't know what that was last split.
Oh man.
It is what it is.
He just knows him well. The other team that I do want to touch on a little bit is Optics. They came in the split really hot. I gave all credit to Crown, and even Arrow showed up. Meteos was playing well. And now we see quite the backslide. And did they overperform in your opinion? And are we seeing the real Optics now?
It's a difficult question because they've only had a couple bad games. They were doing really well for a while, and I think that the biggest wild card of those three players is definitely Arrow. I think Crown being enabled to play well is just a given, and I think that if they give him the tools, he's going to be fine no matter what. Meteos is reliable. He has a bad game here and there. But Arrow has had a really rough couple of years. I think his best finish since 2016 was a 3rd place finish on Phoenix 1, which is ancient history at this point. Yes. So he hasn't shown up in a long time. So the fact that he was starting off well was oh, hey, maybe he's not so washed up. But if things start to go downhill, it's just going to be well, you know what, it was unlikely to begin with. Mm-hmm. I think it's too early to tell right now. If they definitely haven't had a great week and a half. The last 3 games haven't been amazing for them. Mm-hmm. But you got to keep in mind that they are still a game away from breaking into the top 3, because things are so tight in the middle right now. I'd give them a week or 2 more to figure out exactly how things are going to end for them. But yeah, I would say you're right to be worried, but don't give up on them yet.
All right, and this will be the weekend for them to prove themselves. They get an easy game to start off with against Echo Fox. Well, I would say easy, but Echo Fox, they beat TL.
Yeah, and they beat C9. But I think that Echo Fox always has ever since the beginning of franchising, Echo Fox has always ended these splits horribly, but they'll take a game like off of a top team like at a random time. Like they opened the split with beating TL and then just lost every game. And then they ended the last split by beating TL. And they had lost like for 4 weeks in a row before all that happened. So before their like miraculous like 4-game straight win streak in like the last 2 weeks. So I again don't think you need to be worried about Cloud9. Don't think you need to think that Echo Fox is suddenly good. I think it was just one of those times where they're like, got ya, and then they're just gonna go back to playing bad.
I think both. Well, I have to revisit the C9 game, but I know the TL game was definitely a throw by TL. They were leading the game, and
and that was like their first game back after like 10 weeks straight of like competitive play. So like.
They get
no one blamed them for that one. Yeah.
Right. Fox had a longer rest. TL just came off from MSI and whatnot. Exactly. Okay. Looking into Saturday then, we got a couple of good games to watch out for. 100 Thieves against Cloud9 to start off with. 100 Thieves is building on this momentum, but we know that they might. I don't foresee that they will challenge the top 2 spot, maybe even top 3 spot, if I can figure out who the number 3 is. And then we have.
I think Cloud9's 3.
Cloud9's 3.
Are they? Let me check. Cloud9's 2. TSM and CLG are 3.
TSM and CLG are 3. And but 100 Thieves is headed into a right direction. Although I'm very interested to see what goes on with the top lane, if they can figure something out. I'm trying to figure out if any one of them is close to getting resident status, but I think they're fairly new, both Ryu.
Someday should be resident after this split.
And it will remain to be seen if he stays with the team or not. But that's something that 100 Thieves can get excited about. I see Amazing being a good stability for this team. He really did bring
for sure. Yeah,
a good leadership.
I think that it took him a little bit to turn on. But he's doing way better now.
Yeah.
The top lane situation seems to have resolved itself. Maybe with someday being on the bench.
Thank God it has a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely the wild card up there, but like for the most part, it seems like they are at least comfortable with doing the Ryu Fate God play if they need to. The only thing I would say is while they are on an upswing, be really careful. Because the 2 teams they beat were a declining Optic and Echo Fox, I believe, right before that.
Yes.
Echo Fox. Or after that. So that is not a difficult schedule. So like even if they were only a little better, they probably could have beat those guys. So I would definitely still be weary of 100 Thieves. Some of the best guys in the content creation world for LCS are the 100 top guys. But I hate to do this to them, but like even after those 2 wins, it's not enough. It's not enough yet. We need more.
Absolutely. We're looking there. I've talked to them a couple of episodes ago, and they were looking forward to 2020. But I
think everyone's looking forward to 2020 for them. Them and Misfits.
Yes.
They'll just swap rosters.
My gosh. But they're trying things out.
Yeah.
And that's good for them to see. Okay, so any of the games on the Saturday slate that you see might be high scoring versus another game that might be low scoring?
Sure. High scoring, definitely not Cloud9 100 Thieves. I think that 100 Thieves is really slow and Cloud9 they're kind of a mix of the two, but I think overall it's going to be on the slow side. Clutch TL should be bloody. Clutch isn't having a fantastic split. They're not one of the worst teams. But what we know for sure is that they love to fight.
Yes.
And Team Liquid is trying to fight more. So that just leads me to think that there's just going to be nonstop fighting. So I expect that game to be real heavy on the kill counter, with probably Cloud9 100 Thieves being on the low side.
All right. That's going to surprise a lot of our listeners because everyone loves to go into Cloud9 because
Cloud9, like, I love Cloud9. Like, don't get me wrong. But I just think 100 Thieves is so slow that you would have to be one of the fastest teams in the region to make up for that, and I don't think Cloud9 is one of the fastest teams in the region.
No.
Maybe one of the best teams, but not the fastest team.
Not the fastest team. Who does that honor go to?
Probably this split. Probably TL. Clutch is probably right behind them. And then TSM has also been getting faster. I would say TSM is faster than C9. But TL, ever since MSI, have been trying so hard to amp the speed up.
Yes.
So, and they need to, honestly. So it's good. It's good to see, and I think they're just going to keep trying.
Yeah, they definitely, it was a wake up call once they encountered the European teams to know how far they need to go if they were to compete in Worlds. So this is hoping for TSM to come back. It seems to be, to me at least, right now there's some inconsistency, but with the Akaadian news that we talked about, hopefully that brings some more stability. Looking into the Sunday slate, we have Golden Guardians against Team Liquid, Counter Logic against C9, Optics against TSM, Clutch against Fox. That might be a game I would circle around.
That'll be a
100 Thieves
one.
against FlyQuest.
Yep.
Speaking of Cloud9, I think Licorice is close to coming back. Some people had talked about him, and I didn't even hear that news until later on that he might be coming back. But Kumo has done himself well to on the big stage. So looking into that games, more so for in real life, Counter Logic against C9. This is a game that I'm interested in watching. How CLG would bounce back or how C9 would perform. Where do you think? Do you think CLG has topped out? Did you think that we saw the limits of CLG after they lost to Team Liquid last week?
No, I don't think they're in nearly that bad of a position where I say I'd give up on them. It's a tough game to play. That game against TL was rough. And they were definitely tilted going into Sunday. But I don't think that's enough to be like, they're done. What I would say here is this is going to be a super interesting match because last week Kumo definitely tilted in that real nail biter against TSM. Kumo did not play super well. And I would be surprised if Cloud9 were confident in keeping him in against someone like Ruin, who is definitely CLG's shining glory at the moment. And if he does stay in, that's a real like focal point of the match, like to see if Kumo can hold it against him. I think that's going to be a really interesting one for CLG to show that they aren't going to tilt off the planet after last week. And I would favor C9 if they put Licorice in. And if they don't, I would say it's a little more up in the air.
Fantastic. And that will be a game that we were looking into, going in to see what happened on Saturday, going into Sunday. Any of the games that you would think that could be a sort of like a snoozer or low scoring game on Sunday?
100 Thieves FlyQuest.
FlyQuest. Oh, it has to be the last game of the day.
Yeah, those are two slow going teams right there. Wild Turtle is the only recklessly aggressive player, and even still he likes to play the like late game scalers. So how aggressive, how many kills is he gonna get early, even if he is aggressive? So I would say, and then 100 Thieves is slow as molasses right now. So
yes, yeah, they still hold on to that style for whatever reason. Well,
Aaron, trying to find anything that works.
Aaron, thank you so much for joining me and helping us break down this weekend. We really did enjoy your knowledge. Where can our viewers and listeners find your work, find you, hit you up? Any platform that you're working on.
So I work a lot of places right now. Ever since I left Dot at the start of this year and moved out to LA, things have been insane. So I would say the best place to keep track of me is on Twitter. because even if I am doing a billion things at once, I will at least talk about them all in that one place. So my Twitter is just Aaron Mickunas, and then the handle is Aaron_T_M. Yeah, so right now I'm writing for Riot. I'm writing for IGN. I'm writing for, I just did a piece for Polygon. And then my main job is that I write for NewEgg, the hardware seller. I do stuff for their studio YouTube channel. I write their scripts. I do marketing copy. I do reviews. And then NewEgg also has a gaming section called Game Crate. I do a lot of stuff for Game Crate. I'm one of their regulars on their NewEgg Plays Twitch channel every Wednesday and Friday.
Awesome.
Yeah, I do a lot over there. So lots of stuff going on.
Awesome. We get to see all you in all these different places. And that is great for us because we get to enjoy your knowledge and your love for LOL esports. Thank you for joining me. And guys, we'll head into the second half talking a little bit more about DFS. Thank you, Aaron, for joining me. And you have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. And welcome back, folks. This is the second half. We are talking daily fantasy sports in this segment. Now, of course, we'd like to thank Aaron again for just hanging out with me, just giving us knowledge, dropping us more, learning about this game a little bit more. Really helpful. What I neglected to say was to introduce that this video is brought to you by the Game Haus, and you can find all the contents of League of Legends on there. We're trying to become established in the esports world, as well as just being able to be connected to a house. Right now, this is the place that I'm going to be dropping a lot of my write-ups. In the future, going forward, I think before World starts, my cheat sheets will be on the website. So guys, if you want to get access to it, I will post it on my Twitter. I will post it on my bio. But the cheat sheet will be moved to the Game Haus before Worlds at some point. For now, I will still shoot them out the Excel link, and you should be able to find it. So I'd like to thank Aaron again for coming on the show. We really learned a lot, especially with how the state of the rosters go and what we're thinking about in the LEC. Tonight, this is recorded on Thursday, quite late. I apologize, guys. I want to get this out early, but it's fortunate as well because we've got a lot of breaking news that's for this upcoming weekend. Fnatic will be benching Rekkles, will be starting Nemesis in the bot lane, and Magic Felix will be playing mid for Fnatic against Rogue. This might be one of their weeks that they feel like that they could test things out, so we could definitely see a potential for Rogue to pull off an upset, but all in all, I still believe Fnatic to be a very strong team. So I'm adding Fnatic to my GPP, like contrarian, really low stack contrarian. Maybe you go for the $8, you go for the 25 cents, you go for the 10 cents, whichever one, which are the large field tournaments. I would throw a Rogue stack in there just to see what might happen if they can carry that momentum that they had against Origin from last weekend. With that said, we have to be careful that Nemesis is still listed as a mid laner on the DraftKings pool, but he will be playing bot lane, which could potentially disrupt some of the chemistry. But all in all, I feel like Nemesis is pretty good with traditional mages or maybe some marksmen. I believe he's good with some ADCs. He has the capability, and I believe that this will be an uptick for me for playing Broxa or Weepo, maybe Hylissang, and so I wouldn't go beyond that if I do decide to go Fnatic stacks. And for cash game in the LEC, let's start with that. This is the show is about. Splice will be the chalk. Splice will be the most obvious play, and you should play Splice. They will be facing Misfits backup team, as far as we can call him the backup. Kirei and who else? Kirei and Leader are the only two that is in the DraftKings pool, so we don't even need to worry about what the rest of Misfit look like. And I think Splice is on a really hot streak. They should be the chalk. They are very inexpensive for this slate. and makes them very, very easy play. You can stack Splice with just about anyone, maybe not so much with G2, or maybe you can still fit it, but I believe you'll either have a support or a punt at some position, which I'm not too in favor of, unless you can find a good reason to have that punt be a game winning position. With that said, I also really like G2 as they'll be fine. It's against XL. This could be a game that you could think of fading for tournaments because of how fast G2 could finish the game and not putting enough score. We had a debate on that in the Gold Card Pause, so give that a listen as well. But they're safe in all intent and purposes. They should be safe to play. Just be aware that you might be paying for very high value and other teams below them could outscore them. Now, Vitality and Schalke is a tough one for me to figure out. So I did put Vitality first. I do think that they have a good chance to pull off an upset. But I also really like Schalke. I think Vitality's weakness, which is Mowgli the jungler, is actually where Schalke is favored. So this is why I have them as more of a contrarian stack, and whoever wins this will give you enough value to play the Splice, play the G2, and then really just go off from there. I really will come down to finalize my thought probably by tomorrow, by Friday morning. I think I'm completely fading the SK Origin game. It just doesn't make sense for me to see a high scoring game here, and now that I said that, something will happen where the DFS gods are going to laugh at me and said, like, this idiot tried to fade this game. So remember that it has happened. So I didn't put that in my cheat sheet. I wouldn't recommend it personally, but it can happen as it plays out like that. So next thing we'll look at is the LCS slate, which is already posted. So this makes for us good for discussion. I think TSM will be fine. My peers like Golden Guardians. I think from a betting perspective, that is absolutely something that you should think about. Don't like giving betting advice, but the odds are there. It's a plus value. So very good odds for Golden Guardians. I have them as a contrarian stack. I just think that TSM is still the better team, and with more stability around, noting that Akaadian will be starting now, I hope to see a bit more confidence in their game. So TSM is priced very cheaply. They're priced right in the middle, right above Golden Guardians, which means Vegas, or at least DraftKings, thinks that this is a coin flip game, and that gives us a lot of value. You can stack TSM almost well with Team Liquid, but I think I'd had to punt in a certain position. But cash, I would always look to Team Liquid. They're expensive, they're hard to stack. I get that, and I wouldn't recommend them more than the daily double, the fast push maybe, and all the double ups. C9 against 100 Thieves is interesting. I have a bit more confidence because Licorice is coming back. A lot of my peers at the Gold Card Pod really think that 100 Thieves has a good chance. I don't think so. I think C9 will be the team that I'll go to, and likely C9 TSM will be my cash core. And CLG and FlyQuest is another interesting game. This game I can see going either very high scoring, where CLG is just flexing, or it can be a long drawn out wait see it game, trying to outsmart the other, because FlyQuest does have a tendency to play slower than it needs to be. So CLG is just a GPP play or a tournament play for me. Potential upset, I didn't have Fox or Optics listed here, but since you're listening to this or watching this video, I will say that this game is one that is causing me a headache, because I want to believe Optics is still good, but Fox has been a team that's been a really bane to my existence in DFS. They pull off upsets when they shouldn't. Maybe nobody will see this coming, or maybe nobody has this of a strong of an opinion of Fox, or rather that they wouldn't think that Fox could win, is a potential to win, so that means that Fox will probably not win. You know, anytime you give Fox some credit, think that this is a game that they can win, they'll lose. But if you go with Fox this game, they can't win, it's impossible, they're going against the best, and they pull off an upset. So that is really crazy for me. I haven't finalized my thought, but it's a good thing is that this game could, I think it's in the late slate, so that gives me another opportunity to just play this game, and for that, I will go with optics. I really do. I just, yeah. So I have nothing more to say about that, other than that I would probably go with optics in that scenario. So hopefully this helps you get some chance to think about how to attack the slate, and please subscribe to the channel, to the Game House YouTube. Follow Aaron, follow myself on Twitter. I'm always there, available to discuss ideas, discuss things. Be on the lookout for roster announcement as well. I know I'm 99% sure Licorice is back, but no talks of whether it's Finskaren or Blaber that's playing, and so that is something that you need to pin your ears to the ground regarding that. So that's it for this episode. Hope y'all enjoyed it. I'm still waiting for feedback to see how I can get the show to flow better and also improve in my way of delivering your information. Have a good day, everyone.